On This Week in Enterprise Tech, Minecraft gets bought, security gets a Brazilian, and Microsoft drops by to explain why you're doing VDI wrong. Twice on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Twiet. This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 107, recorded September 15th, 2014. Microsoft VDI. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Harry's. For guys who want a great shave experience for a fraction of what you're paying now, go to harrys.com. Get $5 off your first purchase by entering the code ENTERPRISE when you check out. Welcome to Twiet, This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. But of course, I'm joined by my regular cast of kooky characters, starting with Mr. Brian Chee, the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Hawaii, who's having something with a battery?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Lum Singh. This is a 6,000 milliamp hour battery pack, and it actually has a 2-amp outlet.
You know, those are getting so small. I remember when something that big would tops provide like 1,000 milliamp hours.
Yeah.
Nice. But other than battery-related issues, everything else going on okay in Hawaii?
Oh, it's all a matter of trying to build and quote out a big honkin' VDI project for Kapi'olani Community College and trying to make it all fit in the budget.
Well, it's interesting that you should say that because we've got a VDI guest coming up. We're not going to say his name just yet because it's a surprise. But first, let's say hello to the second member of the Twiet Riot. That's right. It's Mr. Curtis Franklin from Information Week. Curtis, it is so good to see you, my friend. How goes things over on the right coast?
Padre, it's another beautiful day here in Florida, and I tell you what, I'm all inspired. Spent Saturday at the Orlando Maker Faire, and I tell you what, going to something like that, seeing the creativity and the spirit of sharing, it makes me feel good, a little bit optimistic for the future of our species.
Well, guys, you know what makes me feel good? When we get to talk about the blips. Let's start it off with a little bit of Windows 9 maybe news. Are you tired of explaining how Windows 8 has a vastly improved kernel, even if the UI and enterprisability, if that's a word, could use some work? Well, rejoice. This September 30th, Microsoft will be holding a Windows event in San Francisco to talk about the future of Windows in the enterprise. The event may mark the availability of a Windows technical preview, which, if the scuttlebutt is to be believed, will allow users to play with a new start menu, virtual desktops, and a notification center, among other oft-requested items.
Well, I'm going to talk about how National Geographic is postulating that big data is going to change the way we eat. Their article goes on to remind us that every time we sign up for online coupons, use a loyalty club, or save a recipe, that data is being used by distribution companies to target ads at you to modify your buying behavior. Add in the changes in the Internet of Things through Wi-Fi and Bluetooth retail analytics, and the typical consumer is besieged by customized marketing. This intrusive marketing has the White House worried, and President Obama has ordered a 90-day review of big data and consumer analytics and how the Justice Department should take note of potential abuses by our law enforcement agencies.
Speaking of the federal government, KLCS and KCET, two Los Angeles area TV stations, have agreed to share a single frequency for over-the-air delivery of their programming. This repackaging, as it's called by the FCC, is possible because the stations had been allotted 6 megahertz of spectrum each. Now, this back in the day of analog signals. Digital TV broadcasts use just a fraction of that allotted spectrum. Now, this is part of the FCC's larger plan to pay local broadcasters to give up their unused spectrum in anticipation of expanding the RF spectrum available to two-way wireless technologies.
All is fair in war and shopping, at least if you're LG and Samsung. Samsung has called on the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office to investigate LG for breaking some of their washing machines. That's right, last week the Korean electronics giant accused some execs from another Korean electronics giant of damaging several high-end Samsung washing machines at a Berlin retail store. Samsung alleges that LG execs deliberately damaged the doors on premium products at 2 different stores just before the IFA Electronics Show. Odd timing since the 2 appliance divisions displayed competing wares at that show. Among those named in the complaint was the head of LG's appliance division. For its part, LG claims that the doors on Samsung products have weak hinges and that they had already agreed to pay for 4 damaged machines even though they only damaged 2. When asked if LG had a message for Samsung, an LG exec reportedly replied, "You mad, bro?"
It's not the competition's fault, but your NAS has worms, or at least it could. A well-known researcher, Jacob Holcomb, a security analyst at Independent Security Evaluators, has combined some of the vulnerabilities he previously found in NAS systems into a self-replicating worm. Holcomb, who so far has discovered 30 zero-day vulnerabilities in a dozen major network-attached storage vendor products, is doing it right, showing the proof of concept worm on an isolated private network. Though he's running his proposed Black Hat Europe presentation past the lawyers now, he says that pretty much every significant NAS vendor is vulnerable. The list includes Seagate, D-Link, Lenovo, Buffalo, QNAP, Western Digital, Netgear, Zyxel, Asustor, TrendNet, HP, and Synology. Sounds like everyone's been invited to the party. So what's an enterprise to do? Watch your perimeters, scan early and often, be on the lookout for unusual traffic patterns. The vulnerabilities are out there for your NAS. It's only a matter of time before a less scrupulous researcher sets one loose in the wild.
Well, we have Microsoft here, and this story is about joining Microsoft, Google, and a number of high-profile tech companies that want the U.S. government to release information showing how they were unwilling partners in surveillance. Yahoo claimed the victory last Thursday when the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court unsealed 1,500 pages of documents that show how Yahoo only grudgingly complied with the Project America Act of 2007. Yahoo unsuccessfully argued that the overly broad mass surveillance requests were unconstitutional, but ultimately exhausted all legal recourse and was forced to surrender the data under the threat of a $250,000 per day fine. Now that Yahoo has succeeded in forcing the FISA court's hand, expect other tech giants to do the same.
And it's official. Microsoft has purchased Mojang, the company that makes the wildly popular game Minecraft, for about $2.5 billion. Notch and the company's founders won't be staying with the new wholly owned subsidiary, presumably to take bags of cash and develop other games on their own. The hate is strong with many loyal Minecrafters, but Minecraft players in the enterprise space have expressed hope that Microsoft's experience with servers, back-end patches, and with, servers may address some of the largest shortcomings of the platform. Stay tuned and keep crafting. Now, when we come back from the break, we've got Andrew Conway from Microsoft, who's here to tell us the secrets of Microsoft's VDI strategy. But before we do that, let's take a break to thank the first sponsor of the Twilight Riot, and it's got to be Harry's. Now, sometimes getting caught up in the tech, we forget that all that tech, all those strategies, all that service is done by people who slave long, hot hours, days in data centers and noisy closets, trying to give us the reliability that we demand out of our network. Well, we'd like to give a little something to those people, and that's why we've asked Harry's to come on and, offer some shaving kits. Now, Harry's is an experience. You have to really experience it for yourself. If you've ever had to shave, then you know the other experience, the experience of having to roam down a lonely alley where you find the razors locked behind some sort of security fence. So you have to call some overworked, underappreciated employee to unlock them. Also, you can overpay for a pack of razors. Well, that's not what Harry's is about, and that's not what you're going to get if you decide to shave with them. Either way, you're getting a cheapy, horrible experience, and Harry's wants to turn that around because Harry's is disrupting the shaver racker by offering us a smooth, high-quality shave at a low price. Now, Harry's was founded less than a year ago by 2 guys, Andy and Jeff, who knew that there was a better way to shave. They focus on giving a great shaving experience for a fraction of the price of other razors, such as Gillette. They have a clean, elegant product design built on the philosophy of less but better. They have high-quality blades engineered in their own factory in Germany. These aren't some rusty, weak blades you're going to get off of some generic line. They make their own because they know that the blades represent the product, and they get you the ultimate for sharpness and strength. Now, I went to Harrys.com and I ordered the engraved Winston set. It was shipped to my door. I love the look and the feel of the set. It just speaks elegance and class. Plus, I get a great shave, and I get it for a low price, and it helps me to shave those unmentionable parts of my forehead. Now, Harry gives you the convenience and the ease of ordering online so that you can skip the razor aisle and go straight to your shaving nirvana. Jeff, one of the co-founders of Harry's, also co-founded eyewear brand Warby Parker, which also disrupted the eyeglass business. So they're used to doing this. They're used to turning industries upside down and giving you a high-quality product for, well, just the same as what you're paying right now. So here's what we want you to do. We want you to go to harrys.com. That's HARRYS.com. Use the promo code ENTERPRISE to get $5 off your first purchase. That's harrys.com. Promo code ENTERPRISE. And we thank Harry's for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. We welcome to the show Mr. Andrew Conway, the Senior Director of Product Marketing for the Cloud and Enterprise Division at Microsoft. Andrew, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Hi there. How's it going?
Oh, fantastic. It's good. Thank you for coming in, because we've been wanting to do this for a while. Get someone from Microsoft to talk about Microsoft's particular philosophy of VDI. And could you just tell us a little bit for the audience at home who's just meeting you for the first time? Who are you and what do you represent?
Yeah. So my name's Andrew Conway. I'm a Senior Director of Product Marketing. And the team here is responsible for what we call enterprise mobility. And so we cover a range of different technologies, including VDI. We cover PC management, mobile device management. We cover identity and access. And then we cover remote desktop services as well. So our goal is really to enable companies to deliver enterprise mobility for their employees. VDI is a key piece of that solution offering. VDI isn't new, but all the same, it's valuable in a number of different areas for enabling users to get work done across a variety of different devices. We see things like efficient management with VDI, so we spend a lot of time in Windows Server making it easier for IT pros to manage VDI directly out of the Windows Server console. It gives opportunities for data protection by centralizing data in the data center, running things in the data center. And then with the trend of BYOD and end users using a number of different devices, it's possible to enable access to Windows applications or to Windows desktops across a range of different device types and across a range of different operating systems. And so we see remote desktop services, desktop virt, VDI as a pretty broad church of technologies, many different solutions encompassed in there. And we're taking a fairly broad approach to enabling that with customers, both directly and with our partners, Citrix, in the space.
Andrew, we've been covering VDI for as long as This Week in Enterprise Tech has existed. I believe it was in the second episode. And it's been interesting to see how it's developed over the last 2 years. Some see VDI as just a way to reduce cost of deployment. Others see it as it's inevitable in a world of BYOD. Still others see it as a fantastic tool if you're looking at a central manageability of services across a vast enterprise. What would you say is Microsoft's philosophy of VDI? Where does Microsoft see VDI in the grand scheme of the enterprise?
Yeah, I'd say, I'll give you an example. One of the things that we're investing in heavily right now is actually to make the deployment easier and the access easier. So one of the things that we're working on is actually taking Windows applications, Windows Server-based applications, to the public cloud. And so to your point, there's a number of different use cases for VDI, for desktop, for remote desktop services. And we see a number of different scenarios, and you outlined some of them. In terms of where we're taking it, though, our goal is to start to remove some of the challenges with VDI around deploying VDI, scaling VDI, making sure you're getting access to all of your users no matter where they're interacting around the world. And so that's one of the reasons why we're investing in taking these technologies to the public cloud. We have a service out there right now called Azure Remote App that we have in public preview, and that gives you some idea of the direction that we're taking. So some of the challenges with VDI around deployment challenges, like I said, scaling the infrastructure. We're starting to try and work on solving those by delivering VDI from the cloud.
Okay. Andrew, I want to do a tangent here. One of the issues has been, and actually in our chat room, Intact Justin, or Contact Justin, I'm sorry, the name's getting cut off, brings us up. He says the cost of VDI has always been either attractive or appalling. There are some VDI solutions out there that just, you look at the price of deployment and you say, why would I ever consider that? And then there are others that offer a bargain basement experience for VDI, but maybe the implementation is not so great. Where does Microsoft fall in that spectrum?
We're addressing a broad range of use cases. What we see with customers is oftentimes they'll start out and they'll think about VDI and they'll think about just delivering a full Windows desktop hosted in their data center, getting it out to all sorts of different devices. What we see as deployments progress, though, is oftentimes customers look at session host technologies, what we used to call terminal services, remote app, so a way to get the apps onto the device. And so I think the important thing here is there isn't like one size that fits all with VDI, which is one of the reasons it's actually kind of tough to build for these scenarios. Is there's many different approaches, but what we want to do is offer a range of different solutions depending on where the customer is. Like I said, some customers start out, they think that they want Windows desktops, full Windows desktops, and that may be appropriate to a certain set of workers that they have. But for other workers, they may just need to access one application remotely, maybe 3 or 4 times a month from, say their phone or from a tablet device. And so it's really, it really varies.
Right. Actually, I like something that you said there about the range of offerings, because that's actually quite important. If you're going to deploy a comprehensive VDI solution, you need to be able to provide for most all use cases. I'm thinking specifically of RDP, of the remote desktop protocol, which has been part of Windows for a long tiime, even before the buzzword VDI came out. And that's actually, for people working in the enterprise, that is one of the most often used pieces of VDI. But that's also changed. Can you talk a little bit about that range, going down from RDP all the way up, of what VDI in Microsoft's philosophy looks like? And actually, Jason, if you could, I think the first slide is perfect for this.
We have a slide coming up.
We do.
Cool. Yeah, so this is a slide that we put together on the team just to address this. You see here the range of different offerings, both on premises and then in the cloud. And so the first one here, session-based computing, like I said, it's what we used to refer to as terminal services. It's something that's been around for a while. And in many cases, just getting someone access to a session on a server, either for a desktop or for the set of applications that they need for their role, is super important. We see this a lot in task worker scenarios, where you may have a worker at a particular company who's deskless. You may have someone who is remote, and they need to access just one or a few specific line of business applications. Super cost effective, easy to manage, uses the RDP protocol, as you noted. I think it's worth saying that when we shipped Windows Server 2012, that was RDP 8.0, we did a number of improvements with the RDP protocol around streaming access, making sure that we got the right performance for video assets, support for USB attached peripherals, support for WAN environments, not just on the LAN. So we did a number of things to improve the performance of the protocol. If you move to a full VDI solution actually running a desktop, what you see here is technologies that have allowed customers to reduce cost in VDI by moving to, actually it looks like the next slide moved on here, but I'll keep going. If you think about actually the slides are just cycling through here, so there we are, we're back to the original slide. If you think about the virtual desktop infrastructure here, it's really about technologies, things like dedupe that we have in Windows Server, where if you're running a lot of desktops that all look the same on a server, we have technologies that will automatically dedupe and save on storage, or capabilities that allow you to just take one image and dynamically compose a user's desktop in the morning and do pooled VDI, where you're storing the user's settings and the app settings separately and bringing them together all in one place. What you see now as we move to the right of this chart, though, is we're working on things in the cloud. First of all, enabling customers to deploy their remote desktop services infrastructures in infrastructure as a service in Azure or with hosters. We have a number of hosting partners out there. Our hosting partner business is growing particularly rapidly. VDI for us is over $1 billion business, and within that, we see the hosting market is one of the most rapidly growing segments, and we do this now on the public cloud with Microsoft Azure. And then finally, on the far right here is a service that we have in private preview right now, Azure Remote App, which takes that remote app capability, brings your Windows apps, your Windows Server-based apps on Session Host up to the Azure cloud, and lets you scale that. So we have that across the Azure data centers in preview now, so you can get access from around the world. It's very easy to sign up for a free trial. So that's kind of the progression of different sort of use cases we see. If we go to maybe if we switch into the next slide now. So our approach here, always be focused on the user experience. A number of reasons that remote desktop services, VDI, desktop vert pilots fail is that people don't consider the user experience. They don't think about the network implications, how you're going to do sharing, do you have the right storage, the right performance storage, et cetera. So we put a lot of focus in RDP with RemoteFX in particular around supporting a rich user experience. The second thing is making sure that it's easy for IT to manage. And so from 2012 onwards, we made the commitment to put management capabilities into Server Manager and Windows Server directly. We also partner there very, very closely with Citrix for those customers needing more advanced, more capable management solutions. And then finally, VDI is always a good way to protect information. We see this in scenarios maybe for trader desktops in banking, or for developer desktops. So outside of that taskless scenario or the mobile scenario I talked about, you also see VDI used to really protect information where you want to have a certain desktop running in the data center and then have professionals, be they traders, developers, remote into that desktop. So you're not taking that information, you're not taking that data and having a whole bunch of it local on their systems.
Andrew, let me ask you really quickly. You've mentioned your partnership with Citrix a few times.
Yeah.
What is Citrix providing Microsoft? I mean, in this partnership, what do you get from them in supporting your VDI solution?
Well, it's joint work between the two teams. We have very close collaboration from an engineering point of view, and so we're working closely with Citrix as we move to the cloud. And Citrix is bringing their Zen App and Zen Desktop solutions to the cloud, working with Azure, which is super exciting. Our customers, as we've talked about throughout this conversation, have just a very broad range of needs. In some cases, it's not possible to address all of those with just a Microsoft solution, and so that's an area where we partner with Citrix. Specifically, Citrix is able to bring a range of different management solutions on top of what we have for Microsoft, which is appropriate for some of our larger customers.
Andrew, we've got a chat room, a very bright chat room here on the Twit TV network, and one of our users, Max1234, asked a question that I think a lot of our audience will be asking right now, which is, well, you know, why don't I just go to the very end of that spectrum chart that you showed us? Why don't I just virtualize everything? Why do I need all those other things that you've associated with VDI if I could take every service, every application, every instance and push it up into a server and just run it off the cloud?
I mean, there's still, like I said at the beginning of the segment, we don't think about VDI or desktop virtualization or all the associated technologies in isolation. We think about it as part of an overall enterprise mobility solution. And so there are situations here where end users, from a user experience point of view, are going to want a native app. So you're still going to be in the mode of deploying native applications either to a Windows device or out to now increasingly mobile devices. And we have different tooling for that, such as Windows Intune, which is our mobile device mobile app management solution. I don't know whether I'm getting fully at the question that's coming in from the chat room there, but we don't view VDI and desktop virtualization as a panacea, if you see what I mean. It's not going to cure every single end user computing challenge. There's still things where the end user is frankly going to need a native experience on a particular device, and that's what IT needs to provide.
No, actually, I think that does answer it exactly, because one of the things that we've become very wary on in the show is when you have a vendor who comes up and says, and this one way of doing it is going to fit everything. It's much better for our audience if you come on and say, look, we don't know exactly what you're going to be doing. Here's a couple of different ways you can do it, and you get to choose which one's for you. Now, I want to bring in my my co-hosts on this. Chee, let's start with you, because you have been playing with Microsoft VDI products for a while. You've been messing around with virtualization. Looking at this philosophy, this idea of providing different capabilities for different instances, all the way up to virtualization, how do you see that playing out over, let's say, your campus in Hawaii?
Actually, this is like the holy grail for a lot of academics. We want to be able to go and virtualize a lot of applications, things like MATLAB, Flittermouse, AutoCAD, and so forth. But being academics, we never have enough money. So one of the things that I'm taking a good hard look at is for the futures. How do I virtualize what I have now, what I need now? But how do I deal with start of the semester and end of the semester surges? And that's one of the reasons why I've been really, really waiting on Azure App Services. How do I move my private cloud applications into the public cloud based on load? So being able to combine both public and private means I can keep my data where it needs to be. I can keep my authentication where it needs to be. But I can also deal with how do I deal with surges. And the public cloud, private cloud combination is just amazing. And being able to run the Azure services for Windows Server 2012 and be able to auto-migrate based upon business rules into the Azure cloud is a killer combination.
Right. Curtis, let me get you in here. We have been talking about VDI for a long time, and when we've had guests come on, they have also sounded very impressive, just like Andrew. You know, they have a solution, they have a philosophy, it seems to work well, and yet VDI adoption hasn't really picked up in the 2 years that we've been covering it. Why is that? I mean, what's the reluctance in the enterprise to look at VDI as a serious alternative to really deploying out your own network?
Well, as Andrew said, I think the issue comes down to user experience on two levels. One is the actual user experience, and other is the implied user experience, what people believe they're going to get with VDI. What we've seen so far is that a number of enterprises, a large number of enterprises, have been entirely willing to deploy VDI as an application-specific solution for a particular type of user, on a particular type of application. It has been fairly widely deployed and been pretty successful. What we've never seen is VDI come in as the general purpose desktop replacement technology. And that's what all of us who have looked at it have been waiting for. That's what everyone from Citrix right through Microsoft has really anticipated will someday be the norm, and for all the reasons we've talked about, ranging from maintenance to security. It just hasn't happened yet. And I'm not sure at this point why, but I will say that users are hooked on a very particular level of user experience. And until they're absolutely convinced that they're going to get that, they're going to be very reluctant to go with VDI. They're going to convey that reluctance to their executives, and the executives, the ones who sign the checks for all this, are going to put their feet down until they're convinced as well.
Andrew, what about that? What both Tibert and Curtis are touching on is this idea of it sounds great and the technology is fantastic, and we like the ability that you're going to be giving us to expand and contract our network as necessary. But as Web9483 in the chat room has said, can a business owner justify the extra cost for things that can mostly be done without it? What are the adoption profiles for this? Who is ripe to deploy VDI?
Yeah, I'll start with Brian's comments, I guess. If you think of why we're taking it to the cloud, it's really the core benefits of cloud that apply broadly to any IT solution. And so you don't have to go through the challenges of deploying it. The solution easily scales up and scales down. And if we get the business models right here, we allow people to buy it and consume it when they need it. So let's take another educational example. Let's say I need to access a certain app where I'm signing up for courses or something, and I need to only use that a few hours a week. Like in the past, you might have to build and scale a whole architecture for a small number of applications that are only used in a light way by certain users. With the cloud, you can basically purchase or only pay for consumption, and you have a way to not have to pay for all that infrastructure yourself. Someone else has that infrastructure, and if you've purchased a tenant there, then we can scale up and scale down with demand. So that was addressing the first one. I would say, the second points there made around user experience are super valid as well. I think it's a tension between that user experience and what users are expecting, and then the cost of doing it yourself. I think the cloud helps for certain scenarios when it comes to doing it yourself. Coming back to your question, though, across the overall use cases, again, it's just we've said this a number of times. There's a number of different use cases. We just did a fairly detailed segmentation study about 6 months ago on the team across VDI. It's sort of interesting, the sets of customers, the sort of the clusters that you get in terms of what customers are doing. The set of customers who are doing desktops in very high value scenarios where they've got very high value employees, like I said, like developers. So for development environments where they're remoting to a different geo, maybe you're doing some development in India or China or wherever it is, or trading environments where you've got really, really strict security requirements and data protection requirements, and it's worth the extra money to pay to run that, desktop in a data center. Make sure that it's secure so that you don't have a trader traveling with a laptop and using his laptop as his primary trading device on a different trading floor, say. So that's one scenario. Other scenarios might be some of the educational scenarios where you've got light use of a few specific apps. You don't need a desktop. You're not making it the primary desktop for a student. You're just giving them access to certain apps. Same scenario may apply to task workers, where you've got people in a shop floor environment, in a retail environment. They just need to go, fill out a timesheet or look at an order book or something where there's just a few apps that they need. They're accessing them from a number of different devices during the day, and VDI provides a good way just to get access to a few particular apps. There's the mobile scenarios that we now see with BYO, where I may need to just remote in to approve some, invoices if I work in purchasing or something like that. So very broad range of scenarios. I think the tension between user experience and cost in all of these scenarios, is very real. And I think the team here that you have is experiencing this, real time. And I'm in broad agreement with the comments that were made, both on cloud benefits and also with respect to, getting access to, giving access to users with the appropriate kind of SLA.
Right. It seems as if the key demographic for VDI is anyone who needs rapid scalability. You need to deploy a lot of instances of the same image, or people who need high manageability. As you said, that educational setting where you need to be able to reset 1,000 workstations at any given time, and you want to not have to send an IT worker out to each individual station to do it. We've actually got a really good question in the chat room from Web9483, who's talking about the performance hit. Can you talk a little bit about the changes that Microsoft has made to RDP? I know here in the studio, we just got some ridiculously powerful Windows 8 machines, and our IT people are looking at using RDP to be able to edit remotely using the power of that workstation. That's a clear use of VDI for us, but maybe you could explain why that's now possible. It's, today's RDP is not your father's RDP.
Yeah, there are a lot of improvements that came in 8.0 around support for lower bandwidth, high latency environments, broader support for USB attached peripherals, because obviously if you've got a PC, just broadly people are using it for all sorts of different things. They're attaching all sorts of different things to it, and so support for remoting Windows 8 gestures and remoting the Windows 8 experience that came in in the 8.0 version of the protocol as well. Better support for rendering video, again across WAN. So just a number of things that the team did at the core of the protocol and the compression algorithms within it, just to drive better performance, better sharing of performance across the network as well. And so if you've got different demands on the pipe, the algorithm is really solving for different users and balancing across different users. The other thing that we did in that time frame as well is bring our own remote desktop protocol apps for different operating systems as well. And so we brought RDP apps for iOS, for Android, and for Mac OS X as well. So the ability to remote in a number of different areas. And so we're solving for not just the core protocol issues around what's happening on the wire. Am I losing packets? Can I make sure that I have the right performance? But we're also solving for support across a bigger range of end devices that you're remoting in from.
Right. Andrew, let's start getting to the brass tacks here, because I know we've only got about 8 minutes before you have to leave us.
Okay.
When you look at bad VDI implementations, when you look at failed VDI implementations, when you look at VDI rollouts that you just sort of shake your head at and say you're doing it the wrong way, or you're expecting the wrong thing out of this, what have been the most common mistakes? What are the biggest pitfalls? What are the things that people try to do with VDI that it was just never designed for?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because it's kind of, the first one is kind of the opposite of a lot of what we've been talking about today, which is one size fits all. There is no one size fits all. And so if you see folks going into a project where they're just thinking like across the entire user base, unless it's an incredibly like homogeneous use case, they think, okay, across the entire user base, one size fits all, I just want to do VDI, then that's normally not a way to, set up for great success, if you see what I mean. So understanding what the different groups of users are doing. Some of the other issues with VDI are, the network. We've talked a lot about network performance. Like once you start to have a lot of people doing VDI, obviously you're remoting everything across the wire. And so even within your organization, there can be, network implications that you may not have anticipated prior. Storage, same thing. You may need a different level of performance from storage than you're anticipating. Everyone jumps on, starts using a particular application. You haven't been able to model how that application is impacting storage, and so you get performance impacts. Storms, when people come in the morning and everyone's booting up in roughly the same time frame. What else? Failing to understand, I would say, the user acceptance for this, and really working across a broad set of actors in IT around who's responsible for different parts of the project and delivering the user experience, because it crosses data center and it crosses into desktop delivery as well. That's many different organizations. The other thing I would say is cost saving. I mean, for one reason or another, some vendors in the space originally were promoting VDI as a way to save a lot of costs, promoting that it would be a cheaper way of doing this than, say, a well-managed desktop. That's turned out not to be the case, as we know. And so if folks are going into it expecting a huge cost saving, then they're really setting up for failure, because what we're talking about is, you do VDI for certain reasons. It's not primarily about saving costs over having a well-managed end-user computing environment.
Right. Andrew, I think the last question we have time for, and it's one I know that there's a lot of members of our audience who are kind of tittery about it, is this the rise of the GPU. The GPU has really changed what we can do with VDI. It's really changed about how much processing power we can push over the pipe. Yep. What has been Microsoft's strategy, talking about the future of VDI, of incorporating the GPU to add to that responsiveness, especially over pipes of vastly differing qualities?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex set of issues around how GPUs work and how we support both physical and virtual GPU across infrastructure. We've done a lot of work, as I said, in 8.0, 8.1 of the protocol to improve our graphics performance and our support broadly there. We are continuing to work on this. And so this is something where, as we look to future versions of our product, you will see us invest more in making sure that graphics-intensive apps are more performant over VDI. That's absolutely it's right near the top of the list of things that customers are asking us for, and it's right near the top of our list for future versions of the protocol.
Fantastic. Now, Andrew, unfortunately, we've reached the end of your time. You've got a heart out, and I want to respect it. But can we invite you back at some point? Because now that we've sort of talked about the overall philosophy of Microsoft and VDI, yeah, I know there's a lot of our audience who would love to get into the nuts and bolts and say, hey, here's a scenario. This is what I've got. How do I best implement this?
Yeah, absolutely. We should do this again. Either myself or we have a broad set of folks here working on VDI. Like I said, it's a huge business for us, over $1 billion business, and so we'd be super excited to participate with you guys again.
Fantastic. Andrew Conway, Microsoft.com, the Senior Director of Product Marketing for Cloud and Enterprise. And Andrew, if you could please tell the Twiat Riot where they can find you, where they could find your products, what they should be looking for if they're interested in VDI.
Got it. They can use the URL that's in the bottom here, so www.microsoft.com/msvdi. That takes you to the overall VDI solution page. I'd encourage you from there to go access the Azure Remote App Trial if you're at all interested in the future of VDI in the cloud and Remote App in the cloud. And you can also link off of that page and get access to a Windows Server 2012 R2 trial as well. So that's sort of a jumping off point for a whole lot of content.
Andrew, thank you very much for being part of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and we'll see you virtually.
Thanks.
Take care. Now, when we come back, we're going to be going over some security problems in our Enterprise Byte. But before that, take a quick look at our last interview from Black Hat 2014. Here at the Pony Express booth at Black Hat 2014, standing next to co-founders of the company, Mr. Paul Padgett and Dave Porcello, who are going to tell us about the next generation of penetration testing. First of all, what is Pony Express?
So Pony Express is a company that sells penetration testing hardware and software. Over the years, we've had the Pwn Plug as a standalone fixed penetration testing platform, and then we've also added a mobile line to include a Pwn phone and a Pwn Pad, which is a penetration testing tablet. And now we're branching into Pwn Pulse, which is a SaaS platform to manage and control all of these Pony devices.
Now, Paul, one of the things that I've seen with Pony Express is, especially for first-time users, when they realize the kind of information that is immediately pullable from a network. Like, for example, the test that you did with an NPR reporter, it just amazes them. It got an ability to open people's minds to the kind of data their network leaks.
Right, Robert, one of the biggest problems is in remote offices of organizations, you can't see what's running. So we all have now Wi-Fi and Bluetooth devices that we bring to work. And those are the devices that we use in our job, but it's also the same devices or the same access points that an attacker will use to come in through a remote location to gain access to the network. So what Pony devices do, very simply, is they let you see what's running on the network or what's running beyond the network, so you can kind of see beyond the perimeter of what most security professionals can only see today. And having that visibility into what's operating in your field of play in your office is really critical to understanding your risk. So
now, Dave, I saw Pony Express at DEF CON a while back, but you've branched out beyond just a simple appliance. Now it's just not something you plug into your network to find out, well, where are you vulnerable? You've got an enterprise offering. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's the same idea. It's really just at scale. So now, instead of one-to-one management of devices, you can actually deploy many of our Pony devices across many branch offices, whether it's hundreds or thousands of branch offices, and you can manage. You can gain that awareness, that security awareness of all those sites from one central location. So it was just a natural progression of what we started with.
Let's say that we've got a 10,000-seat enterprise. That's what we always use in our show as our test example. You've got an IT manager who's looking at maybe deploying pen testers on the edge in the remote offices. You've got the IT manager who wants something that he can remotely use to test the different branches. Where would you like to see Pony Express found in that 10,000-seat network?
Well, it depends. If they have a lot of remote locations, that's where you'll see Pony Express. So in a 10,000-seat enterprise, it it could be all in one building and it wouldn't be interesting for them. But if they are a 10,000-seat enterprise with 100 locations or 1,000 locations, that's where we can help them. They have no security products generally in place in those remote areas today, and those are the areas where the security is the most lax. You think of headquarters has security products, security people, physical security. Remote offices, you walk through the door and you're in. So it's that simple. That's where you would see us.
The best place to see Pony Express is to see it in person, to come to one of these shows and talk to one of your representatives. But if they don't have that ability, if our audience is sitting at home saying, Pony Express sounds interesting, but we need more information, where should they go?
I would go to our website, ponyexpress.com. The PWNIE express.com.
Paul, David, thank you very much for talking to me. Thank you very much for sharing the Pony Express with the rest of the world. We'll try to play with one of these on the show in a future date. But until then, remember, if you don't want to get pwned, come to Pony Express. We want to thank Pony Express for talking to us at Black Hat 2014. There is actually a bit more coverage that we got from Black Hat 2014. We may release it on our YouTube channel at some point or another, but, you just can't capture what it's like to be there. Cheebert, wouldn't you say that? I mean, we were both at Black Hat and DEF CON at the same time. You had to leave a little early. Will you leave early next year?
I left early because my domicile was going to leave early. Otherwise, I would have stayed longer.
Your domicile was currently under attack by, was it 3 hurricanes at the same time?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, I want to stay to the end. I gotta see that box competition.
Oh, the box competition is so much fun. We don't have any video of it because it was DEF CON, and DEF CON, the rules, I actually believe in the rules. The rules are you have to ask everybody who's going to be in the shot. There's no such thing as a panning shot, which kind of ticked me off. Cheebert, you saw this too. You had some big news agencies, BBC, NBC, who they were just setting up cameras and filming without asking anybody. And I'm thinking that would have gotten you kicked out 2-3 years ago. It bothered me.
It's kind of sad, The some of the big news agencies just feel that because of their name, they can just go crazy. And it's like, no, come on, guys, play by the rules.
Play nice, play nice. Speaking of playing nice, we've got a couple of security-themed enterprise bites. Let's go ahead and dive into those. The first one. Actually, this is a topic that we talked about at Black Hat when we sat down with Mr. Gear, and he talked about how he thought the big threat to the internet was the edge network. Well, guess what? It's coming true. Hackers have gone after the edge networks by hacking a Brazilian newspaper. We've got a story here from the Register talking about how some hackers have breached the security of a website for Política Estado, which is a popular Brazilian newspaper, and implanted iframes across the pages that were served up by the website. When the iframes were interpreted on users' browsers, an embedded JavaScript would begin a brute force password attack on that user's home router. Now, once owned, the router's DNS configuration would be changed to route the traffic through a man-in-the-middle server. Cheebert, the technology behind this is nothing new. We've known about man-in-the-middle attacks for a while. We've known about people attacking routers. But this is a little ingenious in using a insecure web page to get an iframe that can't be seen that will brute force the router from the inside. This is upping the game for people who are looking to get a hold on that edge, right?
Yeah, and this is a clear case of where you should have deep packet inspection. The whole deal is, why was there Java iframes there in the beginning, and why didn't the corporate firewall catch it? Translated, they got cheap on their firewall. Now, protecting the perimeter isn't the do-all end-all, but it can sure raise the game so that script kiddies can't get you.
Right. And actually, next week, we've got the guys from IDIS Networks. They were already on the show for a brief bit. They're going to be talking about their successful Kickstarter, selling a enterprise-class firewall. Actually, it's more of a security appliance for the home user. Again, and this is a perfect case in point, because the router wasn't defended against this attack because the router is used to being attacked from the outside. What these hackers were able to do was to attack it from the inside, where the security is relatively none. It's a trust model that says, if you're inside my network, I'm going to trust that anything you send to me is a valid request. If they had had an appliance like the IDIS network iGuardian, it would have been looking at the outgoing traffic saying, wait a minute, why is all this data leaving the network? There's something wrong here. I should shut this down.
And too many firewalls have that model. The correct model is it needs to be both inbound and outbound, because like my scenarios, an infected laptop that a kid brought in and plugged in his dad's desk. So the perimeter needs to be bidirectional.
Yeah. Now, Curtis, this is kind of the nightmare of the advanced persistent threat, right? I mean, if this becomes more prevalent, if people start going after the router from the inside, if people start owning these edge routers, and remember, this attack was only discovered because they got greedy, because they actually started going after passwords and people were able to figure out what they did with the DNS configuration. But if someone were to hack a set of routers, say on Comcast, which already has really, really weak management security, and get a bug that didn't do a lot, but was always there, always ready to activate, then you have to break the trust model of the internet.
Well, I think in large degree the trust model of the internet was broken a long time ago. I think what this means really is a change in the trust model of organizations, including some customer and provider organizations. Like Brian was saying, you've got to be able to look at traffic patterns, both inbound and outbound. The days of just protecting from stuff going on outside your organization are long over. We really need to be looking at 360-degree security, looking for those anomalous traffic patterns, no matter where they originate and no matter where they are going. If it's something that's out of the normal, it needs to be alerted on, investigated, and probably remediated just as quickly as possible.
Chee, combined with what we know about security bugs in most typical home routers, and considering the fact that they make up most of the edge of the internet, this makes for a vulnerability that has very little visibility for the common user. And again, this was another one of the themes from Black Hat 2014, this idea of we need to start developing technologies, assuming that they're going to fail, and demanding that they're visible when they do fail. How do you fix something like this? I mean, if users are not smart enough to secure their own routers, if they're not smart enough to change their default passwords, if they're not smart enough to realize that they're being redirected, do we just throw our hands up in the air? I mean, actually, in the chat room, who is it? It's a Bacon Strip, he's basically making a joke and saying, just give all your secrets away, it's easier. It's a joke, but it's kind of not. I mean, are we at that point where we just assume anything that goes on a network is going to somehow make its way out?
You shouldn't stick anything on the internet that you aren't willing to share, period. But I think one of the big problems is so many of these El Cheapo firewalls, and I call them El Cheapo for a reason. They're running on old versions of Linux or old versions of something, and they're running old kernels. They have a lot of old vulnerabilities. These vendors need to take a lot more responsibility. One of the big differences between an enterprise class and a home Soho firewall is a lot about reporting. All the big players, all the tier 1 firewall vendors actually have a reporting process so that as the vulnerabilities appear, they at least have a global picture of where those vulnerabilities are and can go and notify the sysadmins. That's not happening at the consumer level because, frankly, a lot of people are afraid of the massive torrent of people calling tech support. But I think they need to take a page from people like Symantec and SonicWall, where they have an automatic reporting process so that at least you have an idea on how to battle with it, so that the people like the CERT teams have a chance at getting ahead of this and preventing a wave that sweeps the nation.
All right. Well, let's jump to the next Enterprise Byte, because it's not all bad news. There's a story here from Script Junkie. A security researcher whose grandparents were hacked decided, you know what? I'm going to hack the hackers. Now, you probably have heard about the Microsoft tech support scam. It's been making the rounds. It's something that's been circulating for a few years, but it's really becoming more and more of a nuisance. The idea is simple. Someone calls you up, even if you're not using a Windows PC, and says, oh, I'm from Microsoft, or I'm from a blah, blah, blah company supporting Microsoft, and we've noticed that your computer is sending out a lot of bad traffic. It's probably been owned. This is a courtesy call to see if maybe you want to see if your computer has been compromised. They then guide you through a process that brings you to the Microsoft logs, which will always show errors. That's what logs do. And once they start pointing out the errors, it's supposed to scare you, and then they'll say something like, well, I can fix it for you. All you need to do is download this client, and I'll have access to your computer so I can change all the things that are busted. Of course, when you do that, when you install the client, it now means they have full control of your computer anytime they want, and they can do things like either download your files, watch you as you work, or in worst-case scenarios, they could crypt lock your computer, demanding money in order to get it back. Well, this security researcher decided enough is enough. He started looking at the scam, and what he found was that they were using a legitimate program called AMMYY, AMI or AMI, I don't know how they pronounce it. It was a remote access software that was typically used for people to log into their computers from home and, do remote work. Well, he found a zero-day exploit in one of the DLLs, and so what he did was he coded an exploit for the exploit. He built a Metasploit module that allowed him to inject through a compromised DLL inside AMMYY a string of text. That string of text, when it was unencrypted on the other side, so the attacking computer, the remote computer, it would be converted into an executable that would allow you to own the computer of the person who is trying to own your computer. There's all sorts of things that I absolutely love about this story. Chee, but I want to throw it over to you first. This is kind of like the ultimate geek revenge, right? Someone's hacking your computer and you hack them back.
Oh yeah, totally. It's been a dream of being able to fight back. But keep in mind, if you are doing this, if you're hacking someone else and you're doing it from the US soil, you are actually breaking the law. So you have very little legal foot to stand on. Now, however, one of the things that we used to like doing is we used the TCP back off. So we go and back them off for a certain amount of time, and then just before the timer gives up, we go, oh, here's another packet, and then do another back off. At Interop, we actually had one kid on the line for 72 hours, and
oh, that's right.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, that's right. With the extreme boxes, we actually saw that as part of our civic duty. We were saying, wait a minute, if we could trap this guy in our honeypot and just make him waste his resources on our computers, it means he's not attacking elsewhere.
Yeah, well, hey, it was fun. We went and characterized the person's box, got some location and so forth, and fed that to the authorities. We actually had a whole bunch of ICSI Inspirant boxes, and it was really, really tempting to go and blow his machine out of the water, but we kind of decided not to, because realistically, even though you're defending yourself, in the United States, there is no law that allows you to defend yourself. There's no stand your ground rules for cyber warfare yet.
Right.
President Obama, are you listening? I'd love to be able to fight back. Please, pretty please.
Actually, let's talk about that, because I think this is fascinating. Curtis, I want to toss this over to you. I love the idea of this reactive / proactive security. This idea of, I'm not going to sit and let you probe my defenses all day and knock on my network's doors trying to look for that one weakness that's going to let you in and do really bad stuff. I am going to wait for you to attack me, and then I'm going to go back after you. Especially since I know that you're probably a script kiddie, you're probably using tools that you don't understand, and you probably haven't secured your own network. In fact, the fact that you're using those security tools against my networks means that you've probably got ports open that I can take advantage of. And yet, as Chee said, if I were to do that, suddenly I become the bad guy. I become culpable in the eye of the law. Is that something that we need to change?
There's a piece of me that would love to change it. And here, let me say that a lot of the people I know who I would characterize as Chuck Norris level people in terms of defending themselves electronically would be fine. A lot of enterprises have the skill and talent on board to be fine. My problem is what happens let's say there is a stand your ground equivalent electronically. All of a sudden, as well as I do, that there are going to be a ton of tools out there that purport to allow people to defend themselves. Many of these will be poorly thought out tools that are used by people with no discernible skills. And so the spray, the overspray, the shrapnel zone is going to be enormous. We've already seen a handful of cases going back 15 years ago, of malware that was programmed badly. And because of its bad programming, it went wild and took over large sections of the then very young internet. What would happen if lots of people were able to do that? What would happen if we had a new group of scammers saying, hey, talk to us and we can protect you against these other people? What's to prevent them from loading a spam bot on people's computer and telling them that it's something that goes after hackers? Hey, that's why your computer is slowing down. It's going after a bunch of hackers. This is one of those things where I think it's interesting to talk about it from an ethical and even a technological standpoint, but the practical realities are going to be tough to overcome.
I think this is something that we definitely have to invite our good friend and security guru, Mudge, to come back on the show, because I'm sure he's probably already played with the Metasploit module and he knows how to implement it. Now, folks, we're not advocating striking back. I mean, this is all academic. This is all just looking at the technology, but we know it's possible. But I will leave you with this advice. If you want to do this, if you want to go after the hackers, if you want to exploit the exploiters, it's just revenge. And in the end, the only reward for revenge is revenge. That was a really bad... No, that's not going to stop anyone. In any case, I want to thank everyone for being here for this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. I'm afraid we've gone way over time. Of course, we thank Andrew for coming in to talk about Microsoft VDI. Of course, we want to thank our panelists here, starting with Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, where can the folks find you if they need to find what you're doing as the Geek in Paradise?
I answer lots of questions on Twitter. I answer questions on Facebook. And if all goes well, I'm hopefully, crossing my fingers, going to start publishing with Tom's Hardware.
Ooh, fantastic. We'll look for you there. And Curtis Franklin, I know that you've always got good and new and cool things going on your radio show. What's coming up and where can they find your programming?
Well, we got a lot of interesting stuff going on at InfoWorld. There are two new things we're doing called InfoWorld Information Week. We've got two new things going on called Information Week University. One starts tomorrow, Cloud Basics. We've got one on IT management beginning next week. I'm getting ready for the Interop New York conference. I'm going to be there the entire week. We're going to be doing 8 live shows. I'm going to be gathering a lot of information for follow-up shows. We're going to have a couple of little special things going on for people who listen. Some of those... type in the word you hear, the magic word of the day, and get some free cool stuff. And in the meantime, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern is This Information Week. It's our weekly look back at the biggest stories on informationweek.com. We'd love it if folks would come join the conversation and let us know how we're doing.
Cheebert, Curtis, thank you so very much for being a part of This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's not the same without you.
Thanks, Padre.
And folks, we want to thank you. That's right, you, the person who listens to the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe. That's according to 9 out of 10 script kiddies. We could not do the show without you. We literally couldn't do it without you. We need an audience. We need people who spread the word about This Week in Enterprise Tech, and it's always you. And so we want to do something special for you. We want to give you a way to get This Week in Enterprise Tech automatically to your device of choice. If you go to our show page at twit.tv/Twiet, you'll see a little drop-down menu that gives you the options for automatically downloading the version of your choice onto the device of your choice. Do you want the audio version on your iPhone or your Android phone so you can listen on your way to work? We can do that. Do you want the video version on your mobile device, your tablet, so that you can watch while you're in the office? Sure, we could do that. Do you want the high-definition version automatically downloaded to your PC or your Mac, or do you want it available for streaming on your Roku? we can do that. It's part of the experiment that is Twit TV. Also, did you know that we do this show live? That's right. If you stop by on Mondays at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, live.twit.tv, you can watch the show from beginning to end, including all the bloopers. In fact, there was a big blooper in this show that if you're only watching in the download, you missed. And how sad is that? As long as you're going to be watching live, why not jump into our chat room? I am always pulling questions out of our chat room. It's filled with some of the brightest, the funniest, and some of the biggest thinking geeks that I know. Jump in at irc.twit.tv. Finally, you can also find me on Twitter, all over the internets at twitter.com/PadresJ. If you follow me, you'll find out what I do in between episodes of This Week in Enterprise Tech, including the other shows I do on the Twit TV network, including Padres Corner at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesdays. And on Thursdays, you can find me twice, once at 11 for Know-How and once at 1:30 for Coding 101. Also, thanks, big props to big ups, I believe is how they say it, to all the folks here in the Brick House who make this show possible. Karsten, my super producer, to Lisa and Leo, I just can't talk today. And of course, my guru for all things about that platform that is known by some robot name, Mr. Jason Howell. Jason, what is that thing?
It's called Android.
Android.
And it will rule your life, and it'll make you talk better.
Yeah, do they have a Talk Better app? Because I can use it today.
Talk More Better.
Just
look for that in Play Store. All about Android and Android App Arena. Just go to our site at twit.tv. You'll find them there. Tomorrow on the show, I'll be talking about this. It's the Moto 360.
No.
Yeah.
Is that the one that you forgot to take back from Leo? So
yeah,
it
that's
stayed with him
okay.
over the
He
weekend?
got to spend almost a whole week with it, which is awesome. Because now I think he might even be talking about it on Before You Buy tomorrow. So
fantastic.
That's how it works.
Thank you very much, folks, for being part of this episode. I'm Father Robert Ballecer, just reminding you that if you want to know what's going on in the Enterprise, just keep quiet.